We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Boom. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to talk this morning, take your calls related to the Blueway hearing in West Plains yesterday. I'd like your input. I'd like to hear your thoughts and comments about its effectiveness, the quality of the testimonies that you heard, the value of the overall concept, and the expectations that we can have going forward. I'd like to hear your thoughts and feelings on the way it was presented, who spoke, who didn't speak, and your general consensus on the issue. So we're going to open our phone lines this morning. Before we go there, I want to give those phone lines out. It's 417-257-1111. That is our local number. If you are out in the hinterlands and you are a hinterlander, you can call us at the toll-free at 866-554-6636. Our phone lines are sponsored by our friend Jason over at over at Wits End Classic Barbershop. He is on the square in West Plains, a great young man, a true patriot, an outstanding fine fella, and does a great job cutting your hair for $10. Before we get too deep into the phone calls, and I do want to take your calls, so just bear with me a moment, there's a disturbing news article this morning on Drudge. The Black Caucus is pushing for Sheila Jackson Lee for the Homeland Security post being vacated by the inimitable Janet Napolitano. Now, with all due respect to the Black Caucus, if they put Sheila Jackson Lee in charge of Homeland Security, I personally am packing my duds and I am moving to Belize. And Sheila Jackson can Belize anything she wants. And the Black Caucus can wallow in their disbelief of the truth. But I'm out of here because Sheila Jackson Lee, as a Homeland Security chairman or whatever the heck they call her, secretary, would be probably one of the worst political moves in the history of America. Sheila Jackson Lee is a rampant racist. She is basically mentally deficient, intellectually dishonest, a shame and an embarrassment to the black community in general, and a drag on the Democratic Party in specificity. I wouldn't allow Sheila Jackson Lee to babysit my cat for an hour, much less my nation for an undetermined term. She is a pathetic, violative, useless, empty windbag who constantly portrays black victimization as the real problem behind America. She is so abhorrent to me that when I even see her picture, the gorge rises in my throat. And I got to tell you, if they would even consider her, that tells me everything that I need to know about where this administration is headed. Sheila Jackson Lee is a putrid human being and should be treated as such. The fact that she is routinely reelected says enough about our country. To place her in a position of Homeland Security as the secretary would be the height of hubris. I can't even say what I want because this is public broadcast radio. Okay. I think you get my point about Ms. Lee. Someday I'll tell you exactly how I feel, and I won't hold back. But I can tell you this, and this is a promise. If Sheila Jackson Lee is selected to be the next Secretary of the Homeland Security, which is already completely out of control, under the tutelage of this piece of human offal, I tell you right now, I promise you, I will liquidate everything that I own in the United States of America, and I will move to Belize. And that's no empty promise. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show. Give us your feedback on yesterday's event.
Good morning. Good morning. This is Mark the Spark.
Oh, Mark the Spark in Philadelphia. So you weren't there yesterday, apparently.
No, but I was in spirit, and I watched streaming, which I very much appreciate that, and I found that out through Dwayne from his website, the Missouri Torch.
Yeah.
I signed up for his newsletter, and so that's how I found out about his streaming.
Good job.
So,
he's got a great newsletter out there. TheMissouriTorch.com, folks. Go sign up for it. Go ahead.
So I was actually somewhat impressed with the witnesses, especially the two gals. That would be Sonia Anderson and Missy Irvin. Missy Irvin's from Arkansas, and Sonia Anderson.
She
from
was
Missouri.
the state senator. I was very impressed with Missy as well. Not so much the first gal, but Missy Irvin was a very, very powerful witness.
Right. And I do very much agree that they needed to have you or Doreen or Bob Parker on there. So it brings up the question: who invited who? And I guess it was Jason Smith that invited everybody. I don't know who was the spark for causing this thing to happen. But
the other problem there was that there were two gentlemen there that were from Voice of the Ozarks organization, and when you've only got 8 panel members, half of whom are from Missouri and the other half from Arkanistan and Missouristan. So that's not a slight, Arkanistan. We are now the new conjoined Mo-Arkanistan under the Blueway. Okay. But, when you've only got a certain number of seats slotted, I got to say, I find it, first of all, they were effective witnesses, but having 2 people from Voice of the Ozarks was probably inappropriate. And they didn't couch the one gentleman as if he was from Voice of the Ozarks, but he was. That's an organization he's associated with. And they couched him as a landowner, and I think that was disingenuous and somewhat dishonest. Because, they didn't really, under full disclosure, announce that he was, and I don't think we should have 2 members of one organization on a panel with limited seats. Let's put it that way.
I agree.
I don't think he did a bad job, but I don't think it was appropriate that Jerry King was the president of Voice of the Ozarks, and it was appropriate for him to be there. But the other gentleman really, was superfluous to that, and frankly, the property rights coalitions, the PRCs, which weren't mentioned at all, frankly, were the real foot soldiers, the lieutenants, the majors, the generals in the Blue Way fight. And I'm discouraged about the fact that they weren't mentioned, that Jason refused to acknowledge them, and quite frankly, the Voice of the Ozarks, when Jason made the comment that that was the biggest property rights group in the Ozarks, to his credit, he kind of hung his head and said, "No, we're not. We're only a couple of hundred strong." But that should have been his opportunity to stand up and say, for the record, the PRC, which is probably half the audience out here, those were the folks that were also participating in this, and all credit should be granted to them. That is what, that's what should have happened.
Well, here's the other part. The other part is that I appreciated Sonia Anderson's input, but if you look at the map of who she represents, that's northern Springfield and north of Springfield, and that's not even that area was not affected by the White River Basin. From my understanding, it was southern Springfield and other territories.
True.
So
south and east.
Right. So you would think that they would, if they're going to have people on the panel, you should have people who are more directly affected, like Doreen, yourself, Bob Parker, all the others. I mean, it's
look, there are plenty of representatives who I want to know why they didn't have Jeannie up there. She and the grassroots organization in Arkansas. This was what this looked to me to be was an opportunity for politicians to get up and have their say. There weren't really very many folks up there who weren't in the political class, if you will. And, that what that says is that they were more interested in making and utilizing the opportunity to exploit political points out of it than they were in really getting true testimony from witnesses who are affected by this. Now, there are literally thousands of individuals who are articulate and would have been more than competent to go up there and provide a testimony on that panel that really would have perhaps been more associated to the issue. In other words, they may not necessarily represent other people in an elected position, but that doesn't change the fact that their particular situation was worthy of mention or discussion. I don't know. A witness to me is someone who's affected, and a politician is not affected except through their constituency, right?
Right.
Now, I get the fact that you want a politician to be able to say, this is what our constituency has told us, but that could have been done in a written format into the congressional record. So, I personally, and honestly, the whole idea of not subpoenaing someone from the Department of the Interior when the House does have subpoena power, so it was a backslapping, hand clasping opportunity, and that's.
So it seems like it could be the white knight on the white horse syndrome, where they want to come in like Jason Smith might want to appear to be the white knight to save the day, and he's going to do the right thing and fight the good fight. When in fact, when you nail him down, the real serious issues like what you're talking about now, what you talked about before, the real keen people involved in this were not invited, and subpoenaing the key person that should have been there wasn't there. The other thing is that I noticed Agenda 21 was never mentioned.
No, nor was International, nor frankly was Ike Skelton and his group, Missourians Against Agenda 21. They were extraordinarily involved in this thing. Ike was one of the captains that was on every captain's call. I don't understand why this was more of a... I'll tell you, my honest opinion was it was an exploitation of the situation for personal benefit.
Right.
That's how I feel.
The other thing,
I don't want to take anything away from the fact that they did it here, and I'm sure it took a lot of planning and effort and creativity and ingenuity and blah, blah, blah. But I am saying that if all of that creativity and effort and energy and money and ingenuity was spent, but it was spent to feather, the next electoral cycle for those in power, then that's a problem.
Right, and the fact when they brought up about those unelected bureaucrats in D.C., and they brought that up several times. Well, listen, they might be elected, but they're still a bureaucrat, and I don't trust them. And the other thing I leave you with is that the issue of state sovereignty needs to be hammered. It was touched on by the panel, but the congressman didn't really hammer that one home, because state sovereignty not only applies to this issue, but it's the other issues, and that they're all connected, because we have to stand up and protect the territory. So I appreciate it, Mike, your involvement in this. And if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't even know any of this existed. And I appreciate that I was able to watch from a distance, and I'm in touch with many people who were there. And I am surprised that many people showed up, and that's a good sign. And anyway,
well, it was definitely you're very welcome. Thank you very much, Mark. It definitely was a packed house. There's no denying that. So, and I'm glad that it was done. I'm glad that it provided an opportunity for people to have an opportunity to see what was really going on there, and all of those were great things. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, sir.
I'm afraid I didn't make the meeting. I did see the stream, part of the stream at work. I couldn't sit there and watch the whole thing, but I want to remind people that Jason Smith is merely Joanne Emerson with a sex change.
Well,
he is just a continuation of her policies because he's done a good thing, with a
okay.
Does not mean that we should not be suspect in his other motives, which basically is to maintain her constituency.
Right. Well, and honestly, his staff is all of her staff, so there's some, continuity between the two administrations, if you will. I guess my real concern is that, I heard numerous people say to me, and I've even had some folks, declare that they have, newfound respect, or boy, thank goodness Jason was there to save us. And I'm not dismissing Jason's involvement. He did a great thing, but that honestly is his job. But on the flip side of the fence, frankly, every politician there admitted that, or for the most part, admitted that they didn't know anything about this until their constituents brought it to their attention. And no one mentioned the fact that, well, why not? I mean, isn't that their job to protect us? Why should we be the ones to tell them, hey, we're being attacked over here. Could you guys step in and interpose? So I don't want to take anything away from them. And, I'm not out to try to make political enemies, but I do want to make sure that everybody recognizes the fact that, there was a certain level of exploitation that went down here that was really kind of self-serving. I think that's the best phrase. He already made his A-list, and we're not using A in a good way here. Well, I've asked him, I did go up and introduce myself, and I asked him if he would, it was not a very warm welcome, and I asked if he'd come onto the show and for an interview. I could pre-record it, and we could talk about this, and the other issue is administrative agencies, because I've written legislation that is basically a nullification of all federal agencies, and I'd like him to utilize that, at least in part, to as he moves forward. It's the same argument I gave to our state representatives. You freshmen who are going in there have an opportunity to pull out the sword and make a name for yourself from Jump Street. But if you sit there and try to learn the ropes from the elders, you're going to be just as corrupted and compromised as they are. And, your job, your role is to go in there as a warrior for the people, not to learn how to go along to get along. And I don't, I make no bones about it. I'm disappointed that they didn't have Peter Kinder speak. To me, I don't know. He would have spoken for the whole state. And I don't know. I wanted to see more testimony from witnesses who were actually involved in the fight, and I think they would have done a great job. So, thank you for your input and your comments.
The fact that he ignored the PRC, pretty much, he should tell you how he thinks all by itself.
Well, that and Missourians against Agenda 21. Ike Skelton was there, and no one mentioned that at all. No one mentioned Agenda 21, and no one mentioned international involvement here. And to be honest with you, that should have been put onto the record so that when this Agenda 21 bill in Missouri is overturned and the veto is overridden, we would have an opportunity to point to that congressional record and say, see, this was part of Agenda 21, therefore it falls underneath this bill. Yeah. And that was a serious mistake. Right. That was a serious mistake.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for the call.
Thank you, Mike.
Hi, caller. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mike. It's Mike.
Hi, turn that radio down, please.
I just paused you. I thought you hit the nail on the head when you said last night that it was good for the cause, but that there was definite exploitation.
And it was good for the cause. It brought awareness to an issue that many people weren't even aware existed. And I'm grateful for the fact that it did.
But, I felt like Chief Dan George in the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales last night, that part where he's pondering something, and then at the end he says, and then we declared war against the United States after all this pondering. I kept pondering and getting angry last night because I just suddenly realized, well, for one thing, the Arkansas representative, Mr. Crawford, showed a lot more respect to the grassroots group he worked with because the Justice of the Peace was actually suggested by Jeannie Bullsworth in Skeer, Arkansas.
Right.
He did.
Well, why wasn't Jeannie Burlsworth up there? I mean, she is articulate. She is. I mean, she's a lovely woman. She is. I mean, knows this stuff frontwards and backwards. She is an excellent spokeswoman for the cause and for the group. I'm shocked and stunned and amazed.
She would have done great, but I guess my point is, Jeannie believed the Justice of the Peace there because he was the first one to get a county rejection proposal out, of which we had, 17 of 21 in Missouri signed, and they had 18 in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. He's the one who started that ball rolling. Then, as you said, Ike Skelton was there, who really picked up the ball and ran with it. And he was there and ignored. But a lot more respect was shown by the Arkansas congressman. And I was thinking, that we suggested Mr. Kinder to represent our views because he was the highest ranking state official to side with us and had done quite a bit to help. Mm-hmm. We never had a response from him. I talked to Jason, the chief of staff, Thursday, Friday. He promised to call me back. He never did. And Mr. Kinder sat around all weekend long waiting, wondering if he was going to be testifying or not. But he was there regardless.
He did show up, and he wasn't even acknowledged to be there.
Nobody
even said, by the way, thanks to Mr. Kinder for coming down here, who's, the lieutenant governor for coming to this event. Even if he's not testifying, they could have at least said to him, thank you for coming here.
Acknowledge him.
Mr. Kinder, please stand up.
And as far as elected officials in Missouri who actually were helping us in the fight, Jeff Pogue was there, who helped us in the back, and
right.
A representative from our area in Oregon County and Shannon County. Mike Cunningham, our senator, was there, who...
And again, no recognition, no introduction to the community. I mean, I don't expect that it was going to be like a church service, okay, that, everybody's going to thank everybody who's there. I just think that it would have been appropriate to show, that there was a considerable level of representation by state officials, other than the people who were up on the dais, by saying, and we have in the audience with us, boom, 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 and name them off and say, these are all representatives who felt that this was an important enough issue to come down here and participate.
And of the representatives of Missouri that were there, Sean Rhodes, Robert Ross, they're nice guys. They're good guys. Nothing against them. But where were they when we were fighting?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, my calls went unanswered. I do know, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here. Look, Sean was on vacation, so I will grant that. But that he wasn't on vacation the whole time. Robert was involved in a couple of issues that I had heard about. But the real issue here is this was an opportunity for politicians to get up and get photo ops and get their name on the record and blah 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 blah. What was missing was the grassroots who started it, fought it, defended against it, and won it.
And Bob Parker was there.
And a lot of politicians were taking credit for something that they were Johnny-come-latelys for. That's all my point is.
That was exploitation, and that bothers me tremendously.
All right, we got to go to a break. I want to thank you very much. We'll continue these calls after we come back from the break. Hang on, folks. We'll be right back.
We are the Ozarks' best news talk, KBMV Birch Tree.
Most of us will agree.